Hello everyone and welcome to the Green Man channel. Hope you're doing good and well. So it's time for a new album review this Sunday and I'm talking about one of my highly anticipated albums of this year from Hatchie. This is her third LP titled Liquorice, which came out on the 7th of November via Secretly Canadian, and the album is 11 tracks and 36 minutes in length. So if you don't know Hatchie, I feel like on past records she's combined sort of pop songs with a Dreampop style, and has done so very effectively. You know, I really loved 2022's Giving the World Away in particular, and that made it high up on my year-end list for that year. And on this record, she seems to be manoeuvring a little bit more into a My Bloody Valentine shoegaze kind of sound, but still with lots of nods to Cocteau Twins as well. And I like the description actually that Michael Sun of The Guardian gives. I'll link his article and review in the description box for the video. And he says, Liquorice, the title of Pilbeam's potent third album, winks at her 2018 breakout EP, Sugar and Spice. That formative work was a candy blast of dream pop and emphasis on pop, indebted as much to Carly Rae Jepsen as Cocteau Twins, whose co-founder Robin Guthrie ended up providing a remix of Pilbeam's single Sure. So yeah, Robin Guthrie has been involved actually with Hatchie before. And there, as I say, there are certainly, you know, there's definitely a sound here which is reminiscent of Cocteau Twins. But I like the way he also makes a comparison to Carly Rae Jepsen. I think that Hatchie has this sort of pop sound as well in her records. And, you know, what I also love about Hatchie is that she has great clarity in her vocals, and I think she's a good singer too. And you can't necessarily say that about a lot of dream pop bands and shoegaze bands. You know, their vocals are often quite flat and buried in the mix, you know, deliberately very soft. And I feel like Harriette Pilbeam, her nickname is Hatchie, but Harriette Pilbeam has got a really strong ability with her vocals, and actually she does, you know, show that on some of the tracks on this record. And I feel like a strength of this album that perhaps wasn't so present certainly on her first album, Keepsake, is the writing here. I feel like the writing is more consistently better and a little more nuanced than on that first record, and I really I did really quite enjoy this album. Whether or not I've loved it as much as Giving the World Away is still to be confirmed. It's still to be decided, I think, to be fair to the album and to give it a bit more time. Although, you know, at the moment I'm instinctively feeling it maybe isn't quite, I'm not quite loving it as much as Giving the World Away, but I do still really like what this record has to offer. Now let's go into some of the songs on this album. And I'm going to pick out, for me, some standout tracks, because I do tend to do that in these reviews. And first of all, I'm going to talk about Carousel, which for me was quite reminiscent of a 1990s Kylie Minogue song in a way. And I really like this song in particular because I feel like it does demonstrate what I was just saying about Hatch's vocals and how they're actually really, really good, and how I don't feel like that is something that's talked about much, that she is actually a good singer as well as being, you know, a musician, as well as being in, you know, having this sound and this style, is that she is a genuinely good singer. Lose It Again was actually the lead single on this record, which I found an interesting choice. I liked Lose It Again, and I like it, I think, more in the flow of the album. But for me, as a lead single, I didn't find it a very strong song just as a lead single. I thought it was sort of a warm, you know, kind of, you know, pleasant shoegaze track, but not something I'd necessarily pick as a lead single. I mean, certainly I thought there are other tracks on here that might have worked a little better for me as lead singles for this record. But saying that, it's a solid song, and I think it does work well in the flow of this Liquorice album. Someone Else's News was another really good track on here. I liked the bass touches in particular on that song. Another song I liked was towards the latter part of the record, which I feel like is an ode to My Bloody Valentine's Love List with the wavy guitar sounds, and that's Anchor. For me, the last two songs on this album really stood out, in particular final song Stuck, which for me was just a fantastic way to finish this album. It's like a little bit of an acceleration on previous, more slower, sugary songs on the record, and it just offers up a slightly kind of, you know, a bit more nuance. I also think in Hatch's vocal delivery, as well as some interesting changes musically too, and it is a great finish to this album, and perhaps left me with, you know, a better impression as well of the record as a whole, having listened to it all the way through a few times now. So actually, Hatch's Liquorice, I feel like it's quite a hard one to score in a way, and I'll say why it's a hard one to score briefly. I think it's just I'm a really big fan of Hatchie and have been now since Giving the World Away's release, and also loved her in Baba Ganoush, and interviewed Charles Sale instantly. A shameless plug of that interview a couple of years ago, and who was one of her bandmates in that band. But yeah, it's hard to score this really because I just feel it's a little different from obviously Giving the World Away. It's more sort of within that sort of Cocteau Twin sound, more purely in that sound, but also the writing's better. So while it might be slightly less the kind of Hatchie I might honestly enjoy, I actually love the pop kind of leaning Hatchie stuff a lot. It is perhaps writing wise a better record. So I'm going to say this is a really quite a strong 7. I'm going to give this a 7.6 out of 10 as my final score for this Hatchie Liquorice record. So let me know what you thought of this one, guys, in the comments. I look forward to hearing what you thought of Hatchie's third album. And yeah, until next time, going to be more reviews coming up very, very shortly. So until then, from me, it is bye for now.